Let me go ahead and get started. First of all, what I want to do is we'll have a separate Q&A after my talk. I'm not sure how long it'll be. It depends upon how you guys feel about it. I was prepared to talk 30 minutes, 45, or babble for an hour if I need to. But first of all, I want to thank you all for being here, and I really appreciate Ann's work in helping make this happen. And Sam's been working real hard and deserves his food. Like I said, if I'd known, I would have brought some food. Anyway, my talk today will be on the de-evolution of Thanksgiving. I've been a vegan for 12 years, previously a vegetarian for 21, and which means I haven't had meat probably in 33 years, which goes against my father's original thoughts on this, that you're going to die. Well, that hasn't happened. But I started out in Dallas, Texas. I managed to pick Cowtown as a place to go veg. And there's lots of horror stories associated with that. But I think one of the things I learned early, that the holiday that strikes the biggest fear and concern into the hearts and souls of those who want to be vegetarians or who want to go plant-based or be vegans is Thanksgiving. Now, it's gotten better now over the past 30-some years. But think about it. You suddenly decided to do something that, 10% of the population now does? And you're going to go home to family and friends and food rituals and emotions and sit there and look at a big bird on top of the table, at least for most people. And so I found in my years that Thanksgiving is one of those holidays that people really have a tough time with initially. And wait, I'm going to talk about the origins of Thanksgiving briefly and how it started out as a time of fasting and praying before feasting sometimes, it depends, and talk a bit about how it's gone on to football gluttony, mutant turkeys, and this formerly sacred time of reflection is now referred to often as Turkey Day, which is kind of disturbing when you think of it. That's what it's become. I listen to some of these news broadcasters, and it's Turkey Day, it's Turkey Day, it's Turkey Day. No, it's not Turkey Day, it's Thanksgiving. This is where we've devolved Thanksgiving into this situation that is just appalling in many, many ways. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the strategies I've learned in approaching Thanksgiving as a vegan or vegetarian, and maybe a bit about the value of a no-fat, plant-based diet. And hopefully you won't be bored. If I see heads fall on the table, I will be perturbed. A brief bit about the history of Thanksgiving. I'm leaving out a lot, but it started out in 1775 when the Continental Congress declared December 18th to be a national day of Thanksgiving. And over the next 9 years, they declared 6 or more Thanksgivings. Hello? Okay, I can't see you anymore, but that's okay. They declared 6 or more Thanksgivings with one Thursday set aside each fall as a day of prayer. In the beginning, Thanksgiving could either be a... Okay, are we there again? Okay, I'm watching things flick on and off here. It's very strange. Okay. In the beginning, Thanksgiving could either be a feast or a fast day. Sometimes a feast to celebrate a blessing, sometimes a fast to seek guidance in a time of difficulty. What a difference. There were sometimes numerous such days in a year. Anyway, in 1789, roughly, a little less than 240 years ago, President George Washington, you may have heard of him, proclaimed Thursday, the 26th of November, a day of, and get this, public thanksgiving and prayer devoted to the service of that great and glorious being who is the beneficent author of all the good that was, that is, or that will be. And obviously you see that all the time right now. It has been an annual tradition since 1863 when during the Civil War, Lincoln proclaimed a national day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens, to be celebrated on December 26th. Anyway, national holiday went on, and all the states had different ways of celebrating Thanksgiving in different periods. But in 1939, President Roosevelt finally gave in to the request of business owners. and established the fourth Thursday of November as Thanksgiving Day. Anyone want to know why they insisted on establishing the fourth Thursday of November as Thanksgiving Day? Why? It was for business. They were blunt. It was more shopping days. It was more shopping days. It was strictly a business decision to put it on the fourth Thursday. And we'll certainly get back to that in a few minutes, because that's a very key point. That's when it officially became commercialized in my mind. So when Roosevelt did that, it caused all kinds of chaos across the country, because there were different states celebrating different Thanksgiving dates. And finally, in 1943, Congress made it official what the national day was. Now, the issue of pardoning a turkey we'll probably come back to, but this will conclude our little historical retrospective. The first president to pardon a turkey was Harry Truman, who also authorized killing 100, dropping nuclear bombs on Japan, of all things. And I find that very ironic when I think about it. I didn't think about that till now. I realized, yeah, he pardoned a turkey, but he slaughtered hundreds of thousands of civilians. Anyway, so our current practice, we've gone from a period of fasting and prayer and deep reflection and gratefulness and thankfulness for what we have in our lives to what we have today, which Anne put it best, it's foul play and gluttony. According to the Calorie Control Council, during this gorging event called Thanksgiving, the average American will stuff down as much as 4,500 calories. That's well over twice the recommended daily allowance, and by my standards, that's 3 times the daily calories you need per day. And that's 229 grams of fat. It's an immense amount of fat. It's equivalent to 1/4 the average daily calorie intake and about 3.5 times the daily fat. And that doesn't account the beverages, the appetizers, and the snacks. It's equivalent to about 3 sticks of butter, one meal. Would you ever sit down and eat 3 sticks of butter? Well, that's what people are going to do the equivalent of in a week from today. That's the absolute nutritional reality of what's going on. Now, there is an irony about pardoning turkeys. I thought about that, because Obama's going to go through a big strut in a week about pardoning turkeys. Yet, so many turkeys are being killed for this one event. And yet, here's a guy who's going to pardon turkeys, but is sending drones out. This was a bit political, but sending drones out that, unfortunately, does kill civilians as well. It makes no sense. It's all show, pardoning a turkey. I mean, that is part of the corporate obfuscation of what's going on. It's like we're doing something nice. We're not thinking about the actual reality of what's going on. It's the politics of consumption. That's one of the tools they use. It's the image that they provide. He's pardoning the turkey. Oh, isn't that great? And every local network in the country, every local news show is going to show that. And that's what the kids are going to see. Oh, he's pardoning a turkey. Well, what about the other 43 million turkeys that were bred just to be eaten next week? 43 million turkeys are raised every year for this event. It's a lot of turkey. So what's happened is we've managed to take Thanksgiving and turn it collectively as a society into a ritual with emotional habits. There's a famous Rockwell painting that came out in the early 1900s that showed mom or dad serving the cooked turkey to their children, and they're all smiling, and the kids are so happy they're going to get turkey. It's the emotional appeal that in part clouds people from truly examining what they're doing for Thanksgiving dinner. If you want some fun, and this is the way I look at fun, it's probably weird, watch some of these commercials for cooking turkeys, for buying turkeys, where they're showing families and kids. Watch them without sound, and then watch them with sound. They're devious. They're evocative in imagery in music, and in voice. It's designed to literally addict you to the emotional appeal of Thanksgiving. I'm doing something wonderful for my family. I'm cooking a turkey, and I'm going to serve it for dinner, and we're going to have a blissful Thanksgiving. And all of our Thanksgivings will be blissful. And when I get older and have my kids, that's what I'm going to do too, because I remember how wonderful it was. This is what we've gotten to. Somebody's texting there. I see you. So anyway, let's talk about the reality of the modern Franken turkey. The turkey today is essentially a mutant. 88% of Americans eat turkey on Thanksgiving Day. 88 to 90%. That's an extraordinary number of people. That's about 290 million people are going to eat turkey in about a week. Now, the original turkey was a wild turkey that could run fast, was lean. Ben Franklin wanted to make it our national bird. Can you imagine if the national bird was a turkey instead of a bald eagle? But that's what it was. So what's happened to the turkey? Well, the turkeys on our tables are fed grossly high-calorie diets, so they grow unnaturally large at unnaturally fast rates, and they become so top-heavy that their legs can barely hold them. Their beaks and toes are cut so they don't scratch each other. 43 million turkeys. If a human baby grew at the same rate as the turkeys do, the child would weigh 1,500 pounds at just 18 weeks of age. That's what they've done to this bird. Now, there are so many reasons not to eat turkey. I made an exhaustive list, and I've taken out the environmental, I've taken out the chemical, I've taken out a lot of reasons. I tried to focus on just some of the top nutritional reasons, or dietary reasons, why turkey is also a problem. Oh, by the way, they also get so big, and this happened in the late 1940s, that turkeys can no longer have sex. All the turkeys have to be artificially inseminated. Now, there's a job description. Okay? Artificially inseminate turkeys. But there are people whose jobs are to do that. Turkeys carry food disease, foodborne disease, Campylobacter, which is the leading cause of foodborne illness in the United States. A whopping 90% of turkeys produced in this country are contaminated with this foodborne virus. 90% of the turkeys are contaminated. There's also a strong chance they have salmonella. That's why they're so worried about you cooking them properly, and we will come back to that. Because they know this. They've done the studies. They know this. That's why they're dangerous. It's not necessarily because it's meat. It's because of the other crud involved. Now, what's interesting is every Thanksgiving when I've gone home, which isn't often because of the way my family is spread across the country, invariably, most of the family, if not all, get sick the next day. I don't. I never have. Why don't I get sick? They say, well, you didn't play with the kids who have the flu. I said, I played with the kids. The symptoms of foodborne illness are very much like the flu. There's no such thing as a 24-hour flu. You've heard that before? I've got the 24-hour flu after a holiday. There's no such thing. It's food poisoning. It's a foodborne disease. The symptoms are the same. How many people know that? There's no such thing as a 24-hour flu. So there are a lot of us who believe, and I don't think this has ever been put to a real scientific rigor, that a lot of the illnesses that tend to happen after the holidays are because of what people are eating, and that it's contaminated. And that's such a mind-blowing thought. Another reason to look at this is not eating turkeys is they're full of synthetic hormones. Why? Well, the turkeys sold in supermarkets are routinely pumped full of artificial hormones to promote muscle mass. So let's have foodborne illness, let's have hormones, and here's the final kicker. I always thought, until I read this a couple of days ago, that the white meat in chicken is lean, doesn't have much fat. It is loaded with saturated fat. And saturated fat is one of the most dangerous types of fat there is. It's been solidly linked to heart disease and cancers. It's marbled throughout the muscle of the turkey breast. You can't trim it off. So people think they're eating something that's lean and low in fat. Turkey breast is not. Again, we've been duped. We've been totally duped, and this is part of the corporate goal. They're making a lot of money off our lack of knowledge, off our going with our emotions and not thinking, not learning. So in preparing for this talk, I was watching, one of my favorite guilty pleasures is to watch the Food Network occasionally. And so they're doing all the ritualistic, let's cook turkeys. And I was watching it thinking, here I'm watching world-class chefs disembowel a defeathered bird, take the organs, which they call giblets. Now there's an obfuscation. What are giblets? No, it's organ meat. It's stuff cut out of a bird, sauteed, add some onions, add some corn, add some vegetables, add some bread stuffing, mix it all together, and stuff it up the rear end of a bird, a dead bird. And then, let's sew it up, and let's put it in the oven, and let's feed it to the people that we care about the most. That's what we're doing. How many people realize that mothers and fathers across the country are taking this diseased, hormonized, okay, saturated, fat-filled, dead animal, shoving all this stuff into it, talking about how moist it is. Those are lymph node juices. Those are white blood pus cells. It's not juice. I'm sorry, but let's get real. Okay, this is rhetoric. This is the real language. I'm describing something that I don't say too often because you can't. But I'm watching world-class chefs do this. Julia Child, save the giblets! Save the giblets! Saturday Night Live reference. Go look it up. It's amazing. You've seen Greger's video. I had a chance to interview Michael Greger a couple of years ago. He also endorsed my book. He's quite a guy. One of the things he said in my interview that struck me, he said, you look at the rules and regulations as recommended by the government on how to run your kitchen. They're concerned about cross-contamination. It looks like the standards for a biohazard lab. Well, that's what it is. Meat, dead meat in a kitchen is a biohazard if not treated properly. Let's feed a biohazard to my loved ones. I tease some people. I don't worry about cross-contamination, by the way. Why? I don't have any meat. I don't have to worry about cross-contamination. We had a power outage when I was in Fairfax for a while. The power went out for 3 months. And some of the neighbors are freaking out, and they said, you don't seem upset. Aren't you worried about stuff in your refrigerator? I said, no. It's all plant-based. Oh, it might smell awful. It's not going to kill me. But your dairy, your eggs, your meat, oh, it will kill you if it's in there too long or it'll make you really, really sick if it's in there without coolness. And I could see their brains trying to grasp the concept. He's not worried about no power in his refrigerator. I had no reason to. Our kitchens should not be biohazard labs. Okay, so that's the end of the shock and awe part of the presentation, because I don't want to be disgusting the entire way through. Okay. Well, I know, I realize that, but I didn't know that until after the thing was outlined and and laid out. But let's talk about what happens in terms of the corporate marketing of Thanksgiving, and as Ann put it in some notes we were collaborating on, conspicuous consumption. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, it used to be stores were closed on Thanksgiving. And then the next day was Black Friday, and they'd open them a little bit earlier. And then a little bit earlier. And then a little bit earlier. Well, now, people who work at Walmart cannot go home for Thanksgiving. They're going to have to work Thanksgiving if that's their shift. What a blessing. That's what's happened. This is the first year this is happening in several stores across the country. Workers, in some stores it's optional, in many stores it's not optional. You don't like it? It's a buyer's market. You're fired. So I remember over the years watching people in parking lots sleeping to get bargains, crowds rushing the doors. I mean, just insanity to save a few bucks on a TV set. We need to reconnect to the significance of Thanksgiving. Gratitude, a holiday of giving thanks. And what are we giving thanks for? God, spirit, family, friends, health, or blessings. For life. We're alive. That is such a gift. And so many people squander it and don't treasure it. So anyway, let me talk about some lessons I've learned in being a vegan. Things that I've learned the hard way over my years. I went through the angry vegan phase, the angry vegetarian phase, which I was probably, part of it was due to my younger energies, and part of it due to the fact that I'm arrogant. And I thought I knew it all. Well, I still may, but you know, there's better ways to present it. One of my earliest missteps was coming home from college, just determined to be vegetarian, sitting down at the breakfast table, and thinking I was being so clever by referring to the eggs as butter-fried chicken embryos, the bacon as dead-skinned pig dermis, and the milk as mammary, female mammary, bovine mammary, female bovine mammary juice. Now, I thought I was being clever and making a point. Do you think I accomplished anything doing that? Nothing. It just made everybody furious with me, and rightly so. Rightly so. That is not how you're going to influence somebody. That is not how you're going to change their opinion. Okay? You have to realize you have to provide the information and set a good example, and we're going to talk some more about that in a minute. Anyway, Anne wanted me to tell this story. I had a 92-year-old grandmother at the time who got used to me being a vegetarian because I brought her to Dallas for a couple of weeks, and I cooked nothing but vegetarian variations on the Slavic food she used to cook for me. And she was stunned. She thought we were poor vegetarians. She said, "You eat well?" I said, "Yes, I eat well." So several years later, I had to go to an animal rights conference in California. I was the head photographer for it, and I managed to work it so I could go see her in Seal Beach, just around Long Beach, California. And I told her on the phone, "Listen, Grandma, I'm vegan now, which means no eggs, no cheese, as well as no meat. You got it?" "Yes." "Okay, good." So lousy flight, lousy cab ride. I get into her condo in Leisure World, and I'm going, uh-oh, I can smell it. And she's beaming. She made me dinner. And she pulls out a casserole that she spent all day making. And she had to walk a half mile to the grocery store. This 92-year-old woman get the eggs, the butter, the cottage cheese, and the 3 types of squash that comprise this casserole. Okay. I got no choice. I ate it. I took a second helping. I kissed her on the head, said, "Best damn casserole I've ever had." Tossed and turned all night. So then I went to the conference, and I was telling this story in a bar with a bunch of very militant animal rights people around me. And they got really upset. They were hardcore vegans. They said, "No compromise. You shouldn't have done that. You gave in to the system." I said, "What do you mean? Nobody died. She's a 92-year-old woman." I said, "You believe in compassion for animals?" They said, "Yes, of course. That's what we work for." "Well, what do you think she is?" Oh, it gets better. So I knocked them on the floor on that one. The conversation changed immediately. I'll explain the real message I'm trying to get across in a minute. So I do more of the conference. I'm exhausted. I go back to see her again on the way out. Oh, I forgot. The next day after I had the meal with her, I made her a pizza. I put cheese on it because she was really thin and she wasn't eating well. I wanted to fatten her up a little bit. She said, why won't you have some? And I said, because I don't eat cheese. But she said, you did yesterday. I said, that's because you made it. Please don't do it again. I kissed her on the forehead. So I get back to Seal Beach after the trip. I walk in. I sniff. I went, uh-oh. She's beaming, pulls out the same casserole, puts it on the table. I had 2 big plates full, kissed her on the head, said, best damn casserole I ever had. Now, the reason I tell this story is we need to understand that ultimatums and absolutes really don't exist in this kind of thought process. That we have to take stock intelligently of the situation and make decisions accordingly. I could have stood my ground. It would have crushed her. And so as you move forward and you're not with the norm, you need to take this into account as you grow older, that rules don't always apply the way you think they might. The absolutes don't always work. Let me move on forward here. I changed the outline a little bit. Let me change this a little bit. Let me ask you this, okay? I didn't want to get too much into it, but I'm going to give it a shot. How many of you know, can tell me, can anyone there tell me how much sugar the American Heart Association recommends what's the limit you should have as a man or a woman per day? Anyone know? The American Heart Association recommends a limit on sugar per day for men and women. They're 2 different numbers. Do you know those numbers? Anyone? I'm sorry. Okay, well, let me tell you this. If you're a woman, it's 36 grams. If you're a man, it's 48 grams. And you should memorize that, because you can read labels and you can see that the average 8-ounce, 12-ounce Coca-Cola has 42 grams of sugar in it. You drink that as a male, you basically killed your entire day of sugar. That's a number you need to know. Okay, how much salt should you have per day? That's a bit high, okay? My recommendation is more around the line of 1,600, but that is the conventional wisdom, and at least you know that. That's something else you should pay attention to. It will catch up to you. You're young now. You can chew light bulbs, stay up all night, run a marathon the next day, eat 5 pizzas, and do it all over again. As you get older, though, these abuses to your body, the extra sugar, the extra salt, and the extra fat, will start wearing you down, and that's where these diseases come from. Last question. How much fat should you have per day? No, just fat in general. I'm being easy on you. Okay. Okay. If you follow a no-fat diet like Caldwell Esselstyn, who's reversed heart disease, it would be 14 to 24 grams of fat. The American Heart Association says, I think around, I don't know, 40, something like that. You should find out the numbers and know them. Those are 3 numbers you need to know and memorize. There's a reason they're on labels, and people don't pay attention. I'm going to try to lighten up a little bit, because I want to give you guys a chance to interrogate me. Let me skim through this. I'm leaving out much of stuff. Let's talk about survival tips for Thanksgiving. Does that sound interesting? Okay, well, let's take a look at some of the survival tips for Thanksgiving. 1, well, again, this is biased, but bring vegan food. People often say, it's okay, you don't have to, even if you're vegan. I still bring at least 2 dishes. I mean, bring a big salad. Bring a special dressing. People are not going to turn you away because you brought food. But bring something. It's socially a good idea. One of the things I learned is it wasn't a great idea, in my mind, to try to mimic meat. Now, there are a couple lentil roasts that are pretty kick-ass, but they're not trying to mimic meat. The reason I say this, I once made this really good stew, and I put big chunks of texturized vegetable protein in it, which I like. It's got the texture of meat. And I told my mother before she ate it, and she went, ew! Now, if I'd been smart enough not to tell her, she might have enjoyed it, which is another lesson. You don't have to tell people the food is vegan. You don't have to tell them it has no oil or low oil. Afterwards, if they like it, then you tell them. Then you've made a point. Then they're impressed. But you tell them beforehand, you're giving them a chance to preconceive what they think about your food. And I've seen this again and again and again. Buy a crock pot. Get a crock pot. Go to you can get them at a consignment store or a Goodwill store for $10. Great in a dorm. You can make stews, curries, soups, sauces, all kinds of stuff. Let it cook all day while you're in classes or goofing off. And then, if you're going to a potluck, you take the crock pot with you. It plugs in anywhere. I make apple brown betties. I make corn chowders. I make cornbread with it, all kinds of stuff. And the recipes, they're on the web. Use the Google, Luke. Okay? You can find the recipes. They're out there. Another thing I recommend people do is bring subtlety. And I'm going to read what I wrote about this. Resist the temptation to proudly proclaim that you're vegan and to proselytize about yourself and have a debate about food. If I want to find out what's in food, I don't ask at the dinner table. I'm in the kitchen before dinner, quietly asking the people who brought the meals. Because a dinner table is not where we want to go, hey, does that have this in it? Does that have that? No, that ruins the ambience. That ruins what's supposed to be a joyous, happy occasion. Fine, do your homework. Just go in the kitchen and talk to people. I have a bread machine. I like to bring bread. It's fantastic. It's so easy to do. And most of you may not be able to afford one now. But think about that in the future. One of the things I do is I bring prepared explanations and website addresses. If you're plant-based or vegetarian, or you've got a special dietary need, and you don't have a 30-second summary that explains why, and a longer 2-minute explanation, you're not prepared. Sometimes you only have a 30-second window, and you can say a lot in 30 seconds. A lot of the commercials you see on TV are 15 seconds long. And I also have a couple of websites that I've memorized, so I can write them down. If somebody says, wow, that was really good. I'm interested in maybe going vegetarian or vegan. I get this in line at restaurants when I start talking about stuff. I have websites, I just write them down. Grab a piece of paper, go check this out, go check this out. I think one of the most important things to do is bring a sense of humor, preferably self-deprecating. If teased, laugh. Use that disarming smile. If the situation is mellow, you might tease back, but be careful. It's okay to tease the vegans, but not the reverse. During one Thanksgiving, my father was confused when I was drinking wine with dinner. And I lightened the moment by saying, whoops, I better go call the vegan guru and double check. Okay, and I've often made jokes about hunting down wild vegetables and the dangers of dealing with a rabid block of tofu and, just lighten it up. Don't be offended. They don't understand. And the minute you try to take them on, especially during dinner, it goes nowhere good. Dinner is not where you're going to convert people. Bring understanding and a polite attitude. Exclaiming, ew, how gross, loudly when being offered a drumstick isn't necessarily or particularly useful. The same probably holds true for throwing tomato sauce or catsup on Great Grandma Pearl's mink sweater and yelling, I can't believe you are all eating slabs of dead birds. You might easily get thrown out in the snow with the blunderbuss, and rightly so. This is not the place to make a stand. Bring compassion and love. These are family and friends. This is a festive gathering, not a lecture on human rights, diet and heart disease, or environmental degradation. Focus on the good in the people there, and not what they eat or what they wear. Focus on setting and being an example. Like it or not, you will be seen as representative of vegans everywhere. And if you misbehave, unfortunately, if not unfairly, it reflects on all of us. I've converted more people to veganism by setting an example than by proselytizing. And I suspect it's more effective in the long term and takes a lot less energy. A loving, thankful, thoughtful, understanding, giving, and happy vegan will accomplish more than an arrogant, sanctimonious, obnoxious, know-it-all malcontent. Having been both, I prefer the former. That's the one I want remembered. My blessings to all of you. I hope you have a fantastic holiday. I hope some things I said here make sense. I hope some of it's useful. And I appreciate your tolerating me for the past 45 minutes. And I got kind of worked up a bit here. It's tough. There's so much to say on this topic, but let's open it up for questions. What I would do is let them know in advance. My grandmother was borderline dementia. She had an excuse. Presumably, your parents are intelligent and rational, and you just have to explain that this is where I'm going right now, and I hope you understand. I'm researching it, and it's and it, well, you have to tell them beforehand. My parents had a tough time with it. They teased me, and I had to suck it in. A couple of times I fought back, but I did it with whips. And what you do is you don't walk in and announce it. You let people know beforehand, and then you bring something to the meal as well. And it's a tough transition for the family, but there's no other way. That's not a situation I would compromise in, because once you do that, it's going to come back at you again and again. Why not compromise on this? Why not compromise on that? There's a difference between compromising out of compassion for somebody who doesn't really have it all together, which was my particular example, versus compromising for parents who just don't get it and don't want to get it. But you do it politely, okay, not arrogantly, and you provide a solution, and you bring something. Okay, you've got a crock pot, Stan told me, use it. You, listen. With a great crock pot comes great responsibility. So, you have any questions about diet or about being a vegan, about vegetarianism, or about why no added fat? Well, the only unhealthy. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Uh, the well, corn is a starch, and I don't think it's unhealthy. The only argument that I've heard that I can understand, but I don't really care, is that it's genetically modified. Most of the corn in this country is genetically modified, as are the soybeans. And I decided that I don't eat corn a lot. I do once in a while, and there's nothing I can do about that. I either don't eat corn or eat it once in a while. I don't think it's deleterious, um, but I don't like genetically modified organisms. I don't think we know enough. I think too many scientists think they know it all, and time again, we've been proven wrong. So, I would say corn is one of those things where it's a very starchy thing. I like corn on the cob once in a while. And once in a while, I like making a tortilla casserole with polenta or something like that and corn in it. But it's but not something I live off of. What I try to do from a dietary standpoint, and this is what I recommend to people, and there's some sound nutritional research that's come out recently to support this idea. Eat a diversity of greens. Eat a diversity of vegetables. Eat a diversity of grains. That's the hardest. Most people live off of wheat. Okay. Eat a diversity of fruits. And why do you do this? Let me give you an example. I interviewed Neil Bernard a couple months ago, and he pointed out to me that when you take iron in the supplement, your body has to deal with it all. But if you feed your body greens, your body decides I need only this much iron out of the greens. 4.5 billion years of evolution, your body has an amazing capacity to decide what it needs from what you feed it. You feed it a diversity, you're giving it a maximum range to get what it needs best, and your body will do that. I was going to talk about metabolic syndrome. Does anyone know what that is? Okay, if you look at obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and some cancers, okay? Very serious chronic diseases. One out of two of you guys in this room right now will have symptoms of heart disease within 30 years. One out of three of you women will. if you eat like the normal person does in this country. Now, fortunately, it's been established that the way to prevent and in many cases reverse all those diseases is through a no added fat, i.e. oil, plant-based diet. It's been proven time and time again. So many people think that these 5 diseases I just described are all basically the same disease called metabolic syndrome, and these are just 5 manifestations of it, 5 symptoms of it. Because I see the advice for losing weight. I see the advice for reversing heart disease. It's the same stuff. I just read studies that came out recently that a low-fat, plant-based diet seems to help reverse multiple sclerosis. So feed your body a diversity of food, not fried, and minimize what comes out of packages and cans, which is kind of tough when you're in college and you're a struggling college kid. I understand that. But, you know, you're in the South. There's a lot of good, fresh food around you, a lot more than there is in other parts of the country. And I urge you to take full advice of it, advantage of it. Any more questions? I didn't mean to give the impression I support GMOs. I think Monsanto is one of the greatest evils the world has ever seen. And I think that the GMO foods, I think there is research that shows there are some problems, and it's been squelched. So I don't go out of my way to identify what's not GMO and GMO, because most of the time I eat fresh vegetables and fruits that are locally grown. They're not GMO. You know, tofu once in a while it may be. It depends on what I got. Today I got non-GMO tofu. So I emphasize the fresh foods, the fresh vegetables, the fresh produce, the fresh grains and all that. And some GMO is going to creep in. I don't like it, but you know, they successfully beat the labeling law in Washington recently, and they beat the attempts to do the same in California. It's going to be an uphill battle. Monsanto's got a lot of money, and Coca-Cola is also supporting them. So I don't like GMOs. I inherently think it is hubris, H-U-B-R-I-S, hubris. It's when we think we know what God knows. We don't. Time and time again, we're discovering things about food we didn't know 30 years ago. And we're finding out things that are bad for us we didn't know about 30 years ago. So I think GMOs are risky. I see no reason, this idea that we're going to feed the planet because of GMOs is just absolute silliness. Okay? Proper cultivation of soil, sustainable agricultural practices, you know, getting our act together, better distribution of food, eating better food, stop processing the hell out of it, fat, salt, and sugar, you know, Moss's book. There are more than many ways we can increase food production without having to tinker with something we shouldn't be tinkering with, and that is what's going on a genetic level. Good question. Yep. Go ahead, dear. Hi. The question is about should one go cold turkey or not. I think it depends upon your own personality and your own sense of discipline. I went to vegetarian over a 3 month period. My last meat was Chateau de Briand. You can look that one up. My last chicken was tandoori chicken, 2 or 3 plates of tandoori chicken next month. The third month was grilled halibut with an olive tapenade sauce, and the next month, no meat. Okay? Some people can go cold turkey, and some people can't. I think you need to find out what works best for you. You should know yourself enough, or you need to find out about yourself to know, do you need to transition? Now, some people, it's like being an alcoholic. Okay? They can't give it up. They can't just do one drink and then not get back, you know, go wild again. Okay? And in some cases, I know vegans and vegetarians. They get coaxed into that first bite, and suddenly they're doing it all over again. I think part of it has to come down to with your motivation for why you want to go plant-based. Okay, if it's animal rights issues, it's a little easier than if it's just nutritional or environmental. I think going for environmental reasons is probably would be the easiest to break, I would think, if that's the only reason. Okay, my original impetus was more spiritual and health oriented. So I think it comes down to figure out why you want to do this. If it's for your health, look at it as if you go off the wagon and have meat, at one point, what snowflake causes the avalanche in your body? Okay, I think you all understand the analogy. You don't know. Now, when you're young, you're resilient, but I'm telling you, the body changes. Okay, and you can really do something for your later years now. You're in a position, because of the knowledge we have now, which we did not have when I was your age, to have a major impact on your ability to love, live, and be happy and healthy 30, 40 years from now. And that's something we didn't get. So take advantage of it. Take advantage of what you learn, and for God's sakes, research it. Learn. One of the things I don't like is people just jumping on bandwagons without having done their homework and done a little research online. You know, find the recipes. Join some of these online forums and social media groups and ask people questions and talk to them. People love questions. People love to talk and show off their knowledge. Like, well, given this. But it's a good question. It's for me, it was a transition because back then we didn't have much to transition with. Okay, there weren't many meat analogs. There weren't any number of things. I mean, tofu was a sour yellow block in a big bucket in the Korean import store, 5 miles up the road. Well, when I was your age, I used to have to walk 20 miles to find a block of tofu. But, that's what it was back then. Now, I think making the break and going that route is much easier. And when I was a vegetarian, it was radical. Now I mention vegetarian and people don't blink. Now when I mention vegan, people under 40 tend to get it, under 30. People older still get confused. I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm in a place right now. The guy was shooting deer across the road about a half hour ago. I asked him to stop so I could do this session with you guys, when you wouldn't have to hear gunshots while he's trying to kill deer. But I live in an area where cholesterol is one of the 4 food groups. And I've learned you just have to make the transition and be quiet about it. Here it would have been tough to go veg, although there's a lot of local produce. But, in Atlanta, Georgia, it should be easy. It really should be. You got great climate. You've got access to a lot of food. You do have a very enlightened vegetarian community, vegan community there. So, any more questions? Hi, Debbie. Yeah, let's deal with the second question first. That's been theorized for 30 years, and I tend to agree that it's the hormones and probably some of the pesticides and some of the products that people are consuming, especially in the third world, that's causing puberty rates to get incredibly low. Pesticides, keep in mind, I've worked as a professional organic farmer. I've helped build a 1,500 square foot organic vegetable garden. I hate pesticides, but I did use them once, I will confess. We had a crop of, I had 5 beds of brassicas, which are cauliflowers and cabbages and broccoli and stuff like that. And I spent weeks trying to hand pick these things. They're called harlequin bugs. They see you coming, they inject stuff into the plants, and they chew them. And I couldn't stop them. And I understood now why some farmers resort to this. If your livelihood depends upon the food you grow, you're making a deal with the devil when you go to pesticides. There's actually another angle on, there's all kinds of reasons to avoid pesticides. What it does to the soil, what it does to people, what it does to food. But here's another other angle you probably haven't heard of. They found that plants grown with pesticides had less nutrients than those plants that had to deal with insects. Somehow, in the process of being attacked by the insects, the plants built up more antioxidants, more phytochemicals, more of the stuff that protects us from disease. Isn't that incredible? And that's been proven. That is not speculation. That's been proven. That something about being challenged by nature makes you grow stronger. I'm getting all Nietzsche here, but that's the case. So there's another reason most people don't understand. So that's the last time I'll do that. If the crop dies, it dies. And I've gone out sometimes and had to hand pick insects off of plants 4 times in one day until I get through at least 3 of their generations, and then they're gone. Okay, but in the meantime, the plants are getting strong. They came out, those tomatoes tasted the best of any tomatoes I'd grown. They were attacked daily. They had to get strong. But isn't it a fascinating thought that insects attacking plants we eat cause the plants to be even more nutritious for us? It's amazing. I mean, I could talk about that for 20 minutes. I mean, the implications of that from a conceptual standpoint, it's just fascinating. So thanks for the pesticide question. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead. I would first of all, I would establish one organization to oversee food regulation and what's the word I'm looking for? Making sure our food is safe. Right now, we've got it split across 4 or 5 organizations. One of the organizations responsible for protecting, finding out if our beef is bad, is also responsible for promoting beef, the USDA. So I would immediately consolidate the activities of any organization in government dealing with food into one agency. And then I would give it some legislative clout. Right now, the government cannot order a recall. I mean, we've got people being poisoned by their food. You don't find out about it till 3 or 4 months afterwards, and they knew about it, but they couldn't force the companies to do a recall until they decided, okay, we'll do a recall now. We've made our money. So toothless tiger. It's all because of the corporate food interest. It's a revolving door. They go into the government and they run these agencies. Look at who heads up the FDA. Look at the people who are part of Monsanto, who run some of the food agencies. Anyone here a guy named Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court? Yeah, he used to be a lawyer for Monsanto. Do you think he's going to recuse himself when Monsanto's eventually taken to the Supreme Court? Okay, and there's many examples. A guy named Robert Cohen, who writes the column Not Milkman, has written a lot about Monsanto's political influence and what they're doing in government. But your question's a good one. I would immediately deal with the issue of protecting our food, making sure it's safe to consume, and I would stop spending money to promote cheese and beef, and I would stop forcing cafeterias to serve one plate of meat, one serving of meat, and pizza and dairy. It's silly. But the biggest thing is we're scattered, and it needs to be focused, and it needs to be done without. Look, the food companies are the ones that helped write the nutritional standards, which is why they're so sloppy. That's a whole nother 30-minute talk right there. But that's the first thing I would do. I would love to mandate no more killing of turkeys, no more doing this, but that's not how the system works. That's not how people are going to learn. You have to give people better information about diet, which is another thing I would do. I would get real about what's in our food and what the food is doing to us. Look, a lot of cardio specialists know about Dr. Esselstyn's research that if you give heart patients no-fat, plant-based diets, they will reverse their heart disease. He's done it so many times. He's got a new study coming out, which I can't talk about. And yet, these guys are still recommending stents. They're still recommending bypasses because that's how they make their money. So the patients are not getting good information. And this is where the government has to step in. It's going to be a tough transition because the system has not been working for a long time. And it's like the classic analogy of trying to turn a battleship in the ocean. It takes a while to turn something that big. But you got to start out and do it somewhere. You got to decide you're going to turn it, and then you start making the turn. So I think the next thing I would do is put out accurate information as to what food does for us and what's in food, and I would also design better food labels immediately. I would get that done right. I know the people I would bring in for that. Go ahead. Any more questions? Sure. Go ahead. Hi. On honey? Well, my closest friend's Howard Lyman, the Mad Cowboy, and he's somebody you should learn about. The Mad Cowboy, Howard Lyman. He calls it bee puke, which is what it is. Bee. Yeah, that's a wonderful. I mean, you talk about rhetoric, but that's exactly what it is. I've worked with bees on a farm. To me, they're nothing but pheromone engines. I am not hardcore animal rights. I don't worry about insects. I do worry about the other animals, but the thrust of my research and my I can only do so much. Is I focus more on diet for humans right now. It was global change. I'm sure Anne's told you about my background. I've gone from global change issues to diet issues now. And honey, it's honey. I don't go out of my way to use honey, but if it's in something that I eat, I don't lose my mind over it. I try to be compassionate to myself. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I think I understood your question. It was kind of hard to hear you there. You're asking what's going to happen if people go vegan. What's going to happen to all the livestock? That question came up in a talk recently by a woman who owned a farm with all kinds of animals. It's a tough one. I don't think there's an easy answer. I tend to see things in terms of transitions more and more. That we'd have to plan a transition to a lesser meat-based society. I don't think for a minute we're ever going to get to the point where the entire planet doesn't eat meat. I mean, I would love to see that, but it's not realistic. I'd be happy with 25%, 50%. You know, it would help cut down greenhouse gases a lot. But the thing is that it's not a black and white situation. And do you stop the breeding? I mean, yeah, it's I mean, what happens if cattle prices drop and people eat less meat, which is happening, at least in terms of eating less meat. I don't know about the prices. What happens to all the animals? And I don't know that there's any easy answer for it because we are killing 10 billion animals a year to feed us. That's what's happening right now. 10 billion animals a year. I think it's a million chickens per. I think it's a million chickens per hour. I think is what Neil told me are being slaughtered. And I've raised chickens here not because I want to, but the owner does, and they have emotions. They have emotions. I have no doubt of it. They are not. They're not. I'm sorry. Well, the geese are arrogant adolescents. The ducks wake up every morning forgetting everything that happened the next day. Life is wonderful, and they're runner ducks. They look like bowling pins with fins running around the yard because the Asians bred them to cover a large amount of territory because they eat bugs. Okay, and they have a permanent smile etched in their beaks, and they're fun. They're just happy. Whereas the geese just saunter around arrogant. They're untrainable. The ducks are trainable. The chickens are trainable. The geese are untrainable. It's quite a mixture, and but it's taught me the birds have. I mean, turkeys are well known for being very affectionate, intelligent creatures. And that brings us back to what we were talking about earlier. But my posse is it's I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not happy with having to deal with these animals, but that's part of what I'm caretaking this property, and that's part of what my job is. And I've learned some things from working with them. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead. That's a very good question because it's come up recently in one of the talks I gave. The issue of privilege and being vegetarian. I don't think it's that tough, but it depends on where you are and where you are in the system. There are food deserts I've seen in D.C. that are appalling, where there's literally corners of the town that have 3 liquor stores and no grocery store within 20 miles. and they have a couple 7-Elevens within 5 miles. It's very situational dependent. In different countries, the solutions are going to be different, and in different parts of this country, it's going to be the same thing. I'm not trying to avoid the question, but it is so situational dependent. I mean, you got people in Mexico right now, which is probably one of the most obese nations in the world, who are eating a lot of junk, a lot of ramen and stuff from China because a lot of their corn and tortillas, so I remember reading, are being shipped elsewhere. So they're off their indigenous diets. If you look at the lower so-called underdeveloped nations, I never liked that phrase, most of them have very good indigenous diets. Grains, beans, rice, vegetables. It's when we come in and screw up with their economic system and bring in our fast foods and bring in the junk that we eat, that's when they start having health problems. Okay, most of these countries are almost quasi-vegetarian to some degree. Okay, most of the underdeveloped countries are, to a large degree, more plant-based than we are. It's a good question. It's one of those things that needs to be thought out, and I wish our government was spending more time on things like that than trying to make a 40-second vote, the 40th attempt to defeat a law that's in place, Obamacare. They're not talking about the issues that matter: our health, our environment, our air, our water, and how we do better. But it's a good question. That goes along with the line about your friend next to you about the issue of what to do with the animals. Okay, not everybody can go this way. If I were in it, there are some parts of this country and this world where it'd be very difficult to be a purely plant-based person. And I decided not to worry about that until it happens. You know, but I like those kinds of thought processes, those kinds of thought experiments, because it forces you to think, and in that kind of thinking, it makes you re-examine what's been preconceived without you even realizing you've been preconceiving things. We have a lot of biases, and you've got an advertising industry that's targeting every one of you in this classroom. They want you. You are their prized demographic, and they're going to try to hook you on all kinds of bad stuff in terms of diet, let alone social habits. And the only way you're going to fight them is with knowledge and discipline, and you can do it.